everyone. Welcome me back. I'm back. How is that possible? Yes, it was a long summer. Clearly, I needed it. I traveled a lot. I did not get in front of the microphone. I had so many bold dreams of getting in front of a microphone during the summer. Instead, I went to Ireland and I went to Chautauqua and New York City and some other amazing places. And then I went back to Chautauqua. Was doing all sorts of things, vacationing and teaching and leading some stuff, some cool stuff that we do at Humans in the Verge, as you know. But I'm very glad to be back here in this chair, having deep conversations with people. And I'm very excited about my guest today. As you all know by now, if you know me and have been following me for a while, I am fascinated with change. I mean, the name of this podcast is Humans on the Verge. I'm fascinated with individual change, collective change, cultural change. I'm interested in what does it take to really change one's direction in life, and how do we learn to see the beliefs and our sense of identity and how do we change those, and how do we live through that and survive it? And how are we living, even when we change, still into our values and what we truly find meaningful? And are our values preserved? Are they refined? Are they evolved? These are deep questions that keep me up at night. Well, not really. Other things keep me up at night, and you can only imagine what those are. But the thing is that it is hard to change. It's not easy. We all want to evolve and do things differently and lose 10 pounds. And we all see how stubborn change is. And so what happens in a life when you've made some choices that send you on a direction that ends up reshaping every area of your life to the point that some important parts of your life that you had now feel alien to you or no longer safe and welcoming. And so you just kind of silo those parts off and you just kind of go about living in your new world. But then one day, maybe years after this change, things at first, it's like a little hint of something. It's a little discomfort, but you wake up and you're like, you know what? I think I made the wrong choice. I think I need to figure this out. I need to figure out who I am now and where I'm going. And is there a way back? Is there a way back to that life that I left behind, or the world that I left behind, relationships, things like that. And when we do that, when we take a big leap in our life like that, we get worried about will people accept me again? Am I going to be able to talk to people about things like this? Have they moved on from me, rejected me? Can they still see me for who I am? My guest today is a man who has lived such a past the last 10 years. Rich Logis was a devoted member of the MAGA nation for 7 years, but eventually, due to a string of events, which we'll talk about, and realizations, came to see that he could no longer support the movement. He ended up founding a nonprofit called Leaving MAGA for those who have left MAGA and still desire community, for those who want to empower others to leave, and for those filled with doubt and remorse currently about being a member of MAGA, but are afraid to leave and don't know how to do it. And so I am just thrilled today to have Rich on the show. Welcome, Rich.
Hi, Kelly. How you doing? Let me just get this out of the way really quick. I've got this hat here. It says, I left MAGA. So I'm the walking billboard today. So I've got the Leaving MAGA shirt and I've got the hat, but we're not going to wear the hat. And that was such a lovely introduction. And I want to reciprocate really quick and say how much credit I give you for refusing to rest on the laurels of the family name.
Oh,
and carving out your own path and your own identity. And your dad, when it comes to comedians, there are so many greats, but I have to say he's the GOAT. I do believe he's the GOAT. And if we have a Mount Rushmore, he's there.
He's on it. He's on
Richard
the Mount Rushmore.
Pryor's there. But I think your dad I think he's the GOAT of GOATs of all.
Thank you, Rich.
Even when I was in MAGA, I would often watch your dad's clips. Now, of course, if he were here today, he would give me a swift kick in the ass and then a hug and basically say, whatever you thought I was saying to you in MAGA, I was saying the exact opposite. I can envision him saying that. But I wanted to mention that to you. It's a great honor here to be with you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I appreciate you seeing me and seeing my own path and my own journey. And I think it's such an interesting little moment here because you did say that, like, even when I was in MAGA, I'd watch him with one lens and he would say, that's not what I meant. I meant the opposite. And I think it is a fascinating thing. And this is kind of the root of what we'll talk about today of how we interpret the world to fit our comfort zone, right? To fit our identity and to fit our beliefs. But let's start at the beginning here, so people can know a little bit about your origin story. What initially attracted you back in 2015? I'm guessing he comes down the escalator, and who were you politically then, and what were you seeing, and what were you feeling, and
I would say overall political independent, but I was very cynical and pessimistic and ignorant. And I remember thinking when Trump first ran for office, the campaign was a curiosity for me at first. So I wasn't one of these people who said, I supported him the moment he came down the escalator. And I just want to say, most people who say that's bullshit. All right, so
yeah. Well, what were they supporting, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Even supporters, devout supporters when they say that. So that wasn't the case with me, but I was attracted to what I thought was the independent-minded rhetoric of the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about your dad's that one monologue he does talking about the wealthy and the powerful, and he says it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
And I looked at both parties as the same. I thought that government really only represented the wealthy and the powerful. And while it was true that he was someone who had wealth and had influence, he was a political outsider. There was no political or government or military experience.
Right. He was a civilian on some level. Yeah.
That's right. And both parties opposed him in the beginning. So as a guy who thinks that the two parties are the same, and I realize that the Democratic and Republican parties are against him, more and more I found myself gravitating to the campaign to the point where late 15, early 16, I was all in and I became a grassroots volunteer. I wound up making phone calls. I recruited people to vote for MAGA and for Trump. I wrote part of the call script for the campaign. I showed people where to get registered to vote. I was all in. And after the victory in 2016, it was vindication and it was validation. And we took on the entire world quite literally, and we were victorious. So at that point, it wasn't for me, Kelly, where I told everyone, okay, good job, see you in 4 years. I was part of this history-making moment is how I felt.
Right.
And then I just got deeper and deeper into the MAGA community. I became a pundit. I was writing freelance articles. I had bylines in Fox, places like The Federalist. I wrote articles for a site called WorldNet Daily, which is the site that originated the Obama birther conspiracy. And
wow.
I knew that. And I knew that, but I still wrote for them because I was this aspiring MAGA pundit. I had a professionally produced podcast. I was a sponsor at Trump groups. I donated to them. I spoke at them. There was no mistaking my allegiance to the MAGA movement.
Right. And so immediately what I'm hearing is like, it gave you purpose and identity. You
Definitely
had
did.
suddenly, and you had defeated or you thought you had defeated? What was this great cynical thing of, the deep state or whatever it is? Or, like we really, really thumbed our finger at the elites of this country type of a thing. And so that's heady stuff. I mean, that is really definitely heady stuff. And it can get infused in us in a way where it's like, we might ignore things around the edges that don't line up with what we think. Was that there too for you? Or, I mean, were you, like you said, you're on this site, which, was the place that, did the Obama birther thing, was that a thing where you were like, I'm just going to ignore that or pretend, because we all have a form of denial. We're all human people. We all do this on some level in our life all day. Were you always having to walk that line for yourself, or were you just kind of it all in?
For the most part, there was a rapidity to my activism because when someone believes that anybody who is not with us is not just against us and disagreeing, but they're an existential threat, it makes it easier to justify something that we see, and we might logically look at it and think, well, that's not something I agree with. I didn't even like a lot of the statements that Trump made, about women and about Muslims, but I became convinced because I allowed myself to be influenced into thinking that if Hillary and the Democrats won, that they would seize power permanently. That's what I believed. Now, of course, looking back on it, how delusional that really was to have thought that, but that was my belief, and I was around others who also believed it, and so I was slowly building a MAGA community. And because I believed that I was on the right side of history and I was a real American, and everybody who wasn't with us, they were on the wrong side, they were the fake Americans, it made it easy to overlook what in normal circumstances we might not overlook, whether it be rhetoric or an action. We used to say comments, for example, we used to say that Jews who voted Democrat weren't real Jews, and Christians who voted Democratic, they weren't real Christians. So if you weren't 100% with us, you were 100% against us. Yeah. So if you were 99.99% with us, we considered you not with us, and we viewed you as a threat and as an enemy. And there was this real militaristic mindset that existed, which was that we need to conquer and crush our opponents before they do it to us. Yeah. And I lived that way.
Wow.
Every hour of every day. It wasn't like I took a fucking day off. I never took an hour off from this. Yeah. It was always just adrenaline, just constant fight or flight.
Yeah. It is the playbook, that if we can make the other side, the other team, or the other party, or whatever it is, an existential threat to us, then it does become easy to do things. I mean, this is the playbook. Then it is become easy to, Nazi Germany, put people in trains and shove them off to a labor camp and turn the other way and all of that, and the acceleration of what's going on now in our country with this is absolutely frightening. But it is so interesting how we talk a little bit about it here when I interviewed a gentleman named Steve McIntosh who studies evolutionary psychology and philosophy and things like that. And there is a level of us that is baked into our brains and baked into our human minds, which is tribalism. And most of the time it is concentrated and kind of poured into things like sports teams. Safe tribalism, where we get together on Sundays and we yell at each other across from a football field and things like that.
Paint our nipples a certain color for the team.
Exactly. And crazy hats and stuff like that. Right. And because we are hardwired for it. Humans have gone through phases, a certain evolution of phase where we were all tribes, and that's how we used to do. We would just, if the other tribe came, we would try to kill them. It is what it is. And so we're hardwired for it. It's a very kind of a basic, like you said, you were in fight or flight. So that means even your nervous system was being activated at its most primitive level of survival. You were in survival mode the entire time, which then eliminates the ability actually for critical thinking, because the brain, that part of the brain shuts off when you're in survival mode, because you are just wanting to make sure that the tiger doesn't kill you. You're not going to have an argument with the tiger, right? So you got on the bandwagon. You were bandwagon plus, like everything. You were part of the communications machine. You were part of the machine. You were feeling community, a sense of belonging. Was Rich, for you, was that a sense like had you ever had that kind of political fervor in your life before? Were you ever a big political guy before this?
My first vote for president, it was in the year 2000 when I lived in New York. I was 23 and I voted for Ralph Nader.
Right.
And I voted for Ralph Nader in several elections.
Yes, me too.
And if we remember back before Trump ran, it was going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. And I remember thinking, well, I guess I'm just going to write in a third-party candidate again.
Yeah.
So, and even politically indifferent friends of mine who were apolitical, didn't pay attention to anything, even they said to me, Rich, I don't understand how we're going to have another Bush or another Clinton. Didn't we fight a monarchy to claim our independence from them?
Yeah. It's a great point. Yeah.
These are people who were not at all like me. I was political, but I was very politically lonely. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, slowly, there are these building blocks that happen where I find myself around others who agree. Then we win an election, and then I meet others and become really close with them. And I've got this tight-knit community where we have lunches and we go to family events and we see each other. And we are always online talking to one another. And it was exciting, and it was enthralling, and it was new and novel, and it was unprecedented. And we felt like we weren't the crazies. It was the outside world who were the crazies. We weren't in the cult. The outside world was the cult. And this way of thinking, until I came to realize what it was really doing to me psychologically and emotionally and mentally, it was just so exciting.
Yeah.
And feeling the purpose,
it's like a drug.
And the sense of belonging. Absolutely. There was an addictive quality to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because it's hitting all those parts of your brain that are all, it's giving you the dopamine. It's giving you the sense of belonging. It's, it's giving you a sense of the fight, that like fight thing, that is addicting. Absolutely addicting. So let's talk about what happened then for you. So for 4 years, you're all in that first term. 2020 comes around. COVID hits in March. Something starts happening for you. What's your process like? What's that interior life for you as you start to kind of, I don't know, have a different point of view? I'd love to hear about that.
I like to paraphrase Hemingway in saying that my epiphany happened gradually and then suddenly all at once.
As they do, Rich, as they do.
And in my case, I'm just yet another living proof example of this. There were several reasons that led to my eventual leaving. I knew that the president was mismanaging COVID. In real time, I knew that. I didn't think that Joe Biden had won by fraud. I didn't support January 6th. I knew people who went. I would not have gone even if invited. But I downplayed all of it, though. I didn't take COVID as seriously as I should have. I didn't think it was a bioweapon, but I would goof on. I would talk about, oh, grandma and grandpa are hiding out in a fallout shelter. You know, it's making a bigger deal of this than it is. I remember with the election, I would tell fellow MAGA compatriots, look, I think we're going to win re-election, but there's a good chance we might not because there's going to be a massive turnout. And there was. And so that's why I remember thinking, okay, we lost. Let's lick our wounds and let's rebuild and get ready for the comeback. And on January 6th, though I didn't agree with what happened, I also thought that the press and liberals and Democrats hyperbolized this event into something analogous to 9/11. You know, that's what I publicly said. And so all those reasons alone and collectively at the time weren't enough for me to leave. There were certain moments that accelerated my departure. The first was in the summer of 2021, late summer, early fall. My governor, Ron DeSantis, platformed COVID anti-vaxxers at his press conference.
Yeah.
And this was at a time, if we recall, when the Delta surge was ravaging the country and kids were getting sick and dying of COVID. And in that period of my life, I had 2 children, you know, 2 young kids. And I remember feeling very confused and not understanding why Ron DeSantis would platform anti-vaxxers when he had been a proponent of the vaccine not that long before him doing this.
Yeah.
And so it was like I ran face first into a brick wall and I didn't understand why it was that he was doing it. And it led me to do something that sounds very simple, but it was very profoundly life-altering and changing for me, which was I diversified my news and information sources.
Oh, interesting.
Now, I'm a former journalist. It was my first job out of college. Looking back on it, the flame of curiosity didn't fully extinguish itself, thankfully.
You still had your little pilot light on.
Right. It was but a mere flicker during my time in MAGA.
Right.
Because in MAGA, I was information siloed. All I consumed was right-wing media.
Yeah. And just letting yourself be washed over with the very things you want to hear.
Just being inculcated into all the beliefs. It was part, of course, because we're in the community, we would reject any information that would refute the pervasively held mythologies.
And create any cognitive dissonance, God forbid.
I even had a phrase that I had trademarked at the time, which was called the Democrat Media Industrial Complex. That's how I looked at that was a slogan that I actually legally branded because I thought that any media I didn't consume was part of the liberal propaganda media. And so for the diversification of my news and information sources started to challenge some of my sincerely held beliefs. And I came to start to slowly realize that so much of what I had thought might not have been true. You know, Democrats weren't coming for our guns, and children were not being indoctrinated into public schools, and liberals and progressives weren't importing brown people and foreigners to replace white people. These were some of the beliefs I sincerely held.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, as I come out of the right-wing media echo chamber and I'm consuming what would be considered just traditional media, daily newspapers, you know, your Times, your Posts, your USA Today, I am reading outside of the right-wing world, and it's me and my thoughts at night in solitude really grappling with this burgeoning realization that, holy shit, I am wrong about so much. And then there are some other moments that eventually led to my leaving, which was, if we remember, in early 2022, the Republican Party called the insurrection legitimate political discourse. That was their exact wording. And then the final straw for me was the Uvalde, Texas school shooting on May 24th, 2022. And after that day, shortly thereafter, I quietly left MAGA. I only told my wife and a few others. But Kelly, there was something that was really gnawing at me because I was always so unapologetically public in my support for Trump and MAGA.
Yeah.
That I felt that I needed to reciprocate that, and I needed to publicly renounce my support for MAGA. And it was on, I have an exact date. It's my leaving MAGAversary. It was August 30th, 2022. We just celebrated our third anniversary. On that day, I published a mea culpa. And in that apology, I said that I was sorry, that I was wrong for supporting Trump and MAGA, and that I wanted to express my apologies to anyone I may have hurt with my words and rhetoric. And if we can imagine this, I've got this article edited and I've got the mouse over the arrow is on the publish button.
Yep.
And on one hand, I am just beyond exhilarated that I'm going to do this because deep down I know I should, but there's a fear there because I know that if I do it, what made it scary was the permanence of it.
Yeah.
But I did it. I published it. And the moment that I wrote that story and published it, I actually never thought that anybody would care.
Yeah. Wow.
But I had people coming to me instantaneously, Rich, can you talk to my brother, my father, my sister, my mother, my best friend? And I was completely oblivious to how many relationships had been torn asunder by this movement that I had not just casually or passively supported, but actively supported.
So you didn't even see the fallout. You didn't even understand the fallout until afterwards. I want to go. I want to slow down a little bit because I am so interested in that time when some doubts started to happen, and you started to open up your information gathering, and it's almost like your critical thinking mind is coming back on. Like you said, your curiosity, the flicker of curiosity was there. It did not get extinguished. And you were willing, Rich, to just that first act of being able to turn to new sources of information in our culture and to be willing to say, I'm going to understand that, you were a journalist. You understand that there's a process to journalism. Yes, of course, there's some bias in all journalism. We're humans, there's going to be. But you were willing to expand the information you were getting. I find that moment really fascinating because I think that's the courage moment. Sure, publishing the letter, but it is hard to take in information that we know is going to challenge our own beliefs. And whether you're in a marriage or a friendship or a citizen in a country, that moment when you're willing to look at the other person and say, I need to think about my thinking, or I need to look at this again, I think is one of the most courageous things that we can do in a personal life. And so I would love to just hear from you a little bit about that, about what that was like for you to okay, I'm going to open up this article and read it for the first time. Like, what was those days like?
I had so many moments where I would read a story that countered a belief that I had. And I would say, okay, I am wrong about this. But then I would quickly snap out of it and I would look at a photo of a Mar-a-Lago event that I went to. And I would say, no, I'm in the right place, just hitting a bit of a roadblock. It's normal, having some doubts. We lost the election. I was still disappointed about it. And I had this ping-ponging like this for about a year.
Wow.
It was, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, vacillating between, I can't support this anymore, to, no, this is my life. This is my being, my identity, my personhood. the prospect of having to acknowledge that I had developed and cultivated a personality based on lies, that I allowed myself to have believed those lies, that was something that was a reckoning for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my conscience and my curiosity wouldn't turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful. I consider myself really actually very lucky that I left MAGA, because whatever curiosity I still, just like that, that flicker, it was still there. And I'd open a story up in the Washington Post or the New York Times, and all of a sudden that flame it'd get a little hotter, get a little taller, and then I would do it again. But then I would read something in Breitbart, which is a site that I lived on.
Sure.
I lived on that site. I lived in the comment section, and I would read something and think, no, all right, no, this story makes sense. It was like, that was my world. So I was comfortable in what I knew. And then by the graces of, whether one wants to say divine intervention or not,
Right.
I started to question whether what I was believing was accurate. And then lo and behold, over time, in that 1-year struggle, I could no longer deny what my eyes and my brain were showing me. And my heart was changing from being somebody who had dehumanized everybody who disagreed with me to eventually leaving and then becoming, what I like to say, becoming a born-again human being.
Oh, wow, Rich, that's huge.
That's what I
Wow.
became after leaving, because part of the struggle was also having to make amends to those whom I had lumped into
Yes.
the enemy bucket, and people I had known for decades in my life. And I went to all of them after I left, Kelly, and I said, if you don't accept my apology, I understand, but I need to apologize to you that I thought this way about you, even though we had this long-standing relationship, because you were a blue voter. And everybody accepted my apology. And one person in particular, who was really important to me in college and just gave me a lot of second chances I didn't deserve, he said to me, Rich, apology accepted. I always knew you'd come back.
Ah.
Yeah. I even get emotional thinking about it to this day, because people didn't give up on me.
Mm.
And I want everyone who's seeing this, because I bet that most people who are going to see this have friends and family in MAGA.
Yes.
I don't want them to give up on their close ones either, because my story and the testimonials at our website, which people can read, all of us are living proof that people can change.
Mm.
And I consider myself very fortunate that I still went through with leaving, even though I had nowhere to go.
Yeah. Well,
Because
and
that's
I
how
think
Leaving MAGA was born. It was born from a place of, I want people to have a place to go if they've left or that they're having doubts. And that's why we created the community that we do. And we have an online community. We're starting to expand into in-person communities and in-person events. Organically, we're building this. And of course, we all wish that it was happening faster, but it is, but we are attracting people who also left and said, I want to offer my testimony to the world to show, yes, it's possible to change.
yeah, it's so beautiful, because it's such a basic human need, is to belong somewhere. And you said it right at the beginning. For you, this sense of community lined up with purpose, that lined up with this, kind of nascent political craving to, like, have a voice in this corporate corporate political corruption, which is true. I mean, those of us on the left really believe that too. It's like, yes, for this is 1960s, I've believed that. So it's like, I so get that, but that sense of community, and And that, I mean, we're in it. We're so in it right now, right? I mean, now with the new Trump administration and how he's gone, the Project 2025 and just the rapid pace of which he, with the no guardrails coming in and doing all the things that we were really worried about in the first term happening. But the guardrails, there was mainstream political people still who were slowing it all down. And especially this week, you and I are taping this on September 24th, a few weeks after Charlie Kirk's murder assassination, Jimmy Kimmel getting temporarily kicked off of his, of his show. The escalation, the feeling of escalation that's going on in this country, and the leaders of our country, many of them feeding the escalation. I mean, the president is feeding the escalation. So it's a very frightening time. And so it is so important that this sense of, first of all, compartmentalizing people into these teams, into these things, all of the word slinging and all of I go onto social media, I get sucked up. I try to be really kind of the Zen master, like hold the tension of the opposites and always have empathy for all humans and all of that. And then I go on social media for 5 minutes, especially like it's Twitter or something, and you're like, and you feel your own sense of this storyline happening, and your us versus them happens. And it certainly does feel like, on some level, existential. And it is existential for some people, actually, in our country right now. People are being taken off the street and removed in ways, things that are a little, So it's such a volatile time. But to be able to open up this space and say, you know what? There are a lot of people who are saying, I didn't vote for this. And I believe them, Rich. I believe them. I believe whatever they voted for in this election, this last election, they voted with their wallets most likely, because that's what most people and most independents, and then, of course, MAGA got some more people to come, and the, popular vote and all of that. But I believe the people who say, I did not vote for this and this is not okay, those people need shelter. Those people need a home. Those people need to be able to know that it's okay. It's fine. You see these people on social media who say, I'll never forgive anyone who voted for him. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. How are we going to go forward if that's the case? Because that's perpetual civil war then. That's not going to do it. So I'm so grateful that you have this place, and this place where you can converse and have communities and give ideas to people to leave. One of the things that I wanted to talk about before we get into the full-on, post MAGA time and leaving MAGA, your great organization, is this really interesting thing that you talk about on the site when you briefly tell your story about how you say, just because you voted for this person does not mean that you're stupid or weak or lack good character, because that's what people who voted for the Democrat, who voted for Kamala, they want to dehumanize people who voted for him. And so this is what they say. It's like, you can't, obviously you have no intelligence if you voted for this man. You know who he was the first term and all of that. And you use this really interesting term. You say, one thing that happens in MAGA is that you succumb to these predatory myths. And I find that fascinating, that it is a mythos that bypasses, I think we already talked about it a little bit, but how do you help people as they're leaving kind of walk through that understanding of, like, you're not a bad person. You have moral character. But there was some sort of Kool-Aid was drunk at some point.
Mm-hmm. And I think that even though we don't have any kind of ideological purity test to be in
Right.
the Leaving MAGA community, something that we do have as a non-negotiable mandate is that in order to leave, you have to take responsibility for past words and actions and
Wow.
rhetoric because it's seemingly a contradiction, but I think that these are two statements that can exist simultaneously. We all have agency. We are responsible for our choices and what we say. Fervor or not, no one coaxed or coerced me into supporting MAGA.
Right.
But the flip side of it is that we are also susceptible to those predatory myths.
Yes.
And what they do is they exploit and manipulate a lot of our natural fears and concerns. We have as a Homo sapien species, we are change averse.
Yes.
If we see, if we look at Americans of a certain age, they grew up seeing only white men and mostly white Christian men in power.
Right.
That's all they knew. And then over time, now there are women. Now there are black and brown
men.
people. Now there are, now
a
we
black
have
president.
Right. We have LGBTQ officials and leaders and people who are in the business world. All of a sudden, those changes, which are very visual, people look at those changes, and I don't think that people feel anxiety because most people are racist. It's because they see something being altered around them. And what the right wing does, instead of saying, hey, these changes are actually for the better, here are the benefits of it, they exploit and manipulate that change. And it's why people are vulnerable to having you said it earlier, their survivalist instincts kick in.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for walking through, when we're talking to people who have left, everyone takes accountability, but we also know that we got chewed up into these cogs of MAGA politicians and MAGA media. And, as part of being in MAGA, I say it was exciting and exhilarating until it wasn't. And then when I leave, I realize that what it did is it kept me in these perpetual states of desperation and panic and despair and this all or none nihilism. This feeling always that my life and my livelihood and my family and country are always under siege.
Yeah.
That's a really traumatizing way of living.
Well, Rich, in what you're describing,
and it manifests itself in dehumanizing other people. That's one of the ways it manifested itself.
Yeah, and and people have had the conversation about how social media has eased that into our culture so much faster and so much more intensely because of the nature of it, because we don't share the 6 o'clock news anymore. There's not 3 networks where we're all getting basically the same information about America. And there's something not great about that because independence, and all of that. We could argue, the history of media in this country, but at the same time, we're all feeling that now, Rich. We're all feeling like it's existential dread all day long because we are siloed in, if, you spend 2 seconds on your phone doing, reading anything, it takes time and effort to make sure you have balanced news, that you watch a variety of things, you read a variety of things. And so we're all in this survival mode right now. And I think that's what's so frightening about this particular Trump term, because he is accelerating his agenda, and this 2020 Project 2025 is dismantling things that, hey, I get it. government is corrupt, for sure. I mean, Citizens United cemented that corruption for this country. But do I want all cancer research to be dismantled right now? Probably not. That's going to take a long time. Like destroying things is really easy. Creating the infrastructure of what we're doing. So there's that thing, which is it's really fascinating to kind of be involved in that. And I loved what you said about the agency thing, because that is the only way we are going to get out of this as a country, is for each of us to take responsibility for our own thoughts, our own what we said in a heated moment or in a fearful moment to each other. I'm not proud of some things that I've said. I try to be better on social media I try to be informational on social media as much as I can, but there are definitely things that I'm, not proud of myself. So it is interesting that holding both of those things, because they are both true, Rich. You're very right about that, and that's a very wise position, which is we do have agency, and there is manipulation involved at the same time. And being able to see that is actually a sign of higher intelligence, because we're seeing multiple perspectives at the same time. So, yay, here's to multiple perspectives.
Yeah, here's to intelligence.
Exactly.
Which I don't have an abundance of, so thank you.
Well, you do. You do. Absolutely, you do. So, what's it like? What's it like for you guys right now at Leaving MAGA? How does it work? Let's just talk through this a little bit. I would love to hear how it works. Someone comes to your community, maybe it's a family member who wants to learn how to talk to a family member who's in MAGA, or someone themselves who wants to leave. What are some ways in which you help guide people?
Sure. I want to give a bit of a plug here, if I may, because on Thursday evenings, we host free online support groups for friends and family of those who are still in the thrall of MAGA. So we've had a couple of sessions. They're increasing in attendance, unsurprisingly. So we have a friends and family, we have a reconciliation emphasis on a lot of our work. And friends and family are our allies. When you said before about forgiving those people who say I didn't vote for this, and it's true they didn't, because when I when I hear people say, well, how could you not have known?
Right.
Well, look at me. I'm a perfect example. When you're information siloed, you're not.
Yep.
You're not. Fox News isn't telling its viewers, well, you know what? Cancer research might be cut, or United States Agency for International Development Aid that keeps debilitating illnesses essentially non-existent. Right? They're not hearing that from right-wing media. They're not hearing it from the Alex Joneses and Tucker Carlsons and Nick Fuenteses of the right-wing world. Yep. So it's true that when you say that, they don't know, because they didn't hear it.
And that's so frightening to me, that we're living in America in 2025, and some very, very large, important chunks of information about the quality of life for individuals and the collective are just eliminated from the conversation, because they don't because they know that some of their viewers, I mean, that's my cynicism. It's like Fox News knows that if their viewers heard that, they'd be upset.
They would be.
Yeah.
So it's lying by withholding is what I call it.
It is. It is a form of lying. Withholding truth is a form of lying. Yeah.
And Kelly, we have a few people who were Trump voters in 2024. They were MAGA supporters who left, and we are talking to them right now. We're trying to help them walk through and navigate that process that comes from after you leave, and trying to re-find and reestablish your footing. Maybe they'll give a testimonial with us. We're not sure. No one is ever pressured into doing it. but everyone who
Yeah.
will read our stories at our site, which I would really encourage people to go, and they're all open source at leavingmaga.org. Everybody can read them. They're not paywalled. People will find these stories. They follow a redemptive arc, and they are inspirational. And when people decide to come and get involved with our community, we communicate with each other all of the time. We have, for example, a monthly check-in where several of us get on a Zoom call together and we just see how everyone's doing and we give some good news. We communicate with each other online. We share stories. Every time there's a new member, we have a big introduction ritual that I do where we bring them in and everyone gets to say, hi, hi, Rich, it's so-and-so. And everyone, I want them to feel welcome with us. Because if we're going to encourage people and empower them to leave one community, you got to give them a place to go. You got to give them a destination, some kind of exit ramp and off ramp that they can turn to.
Yeah. It really, really reminds me of addiction intervention. It's a very similar type of process to help people have an off ramp in order to find the place within themselves where they can take responsibility for the what they've done to themselves or their family in some way. It is that reconciliation type of work, and that there is a road forward. There is a road forward to reconciliation, and that it's a place where we can all understand the bigger story around this. That that there are both personal, individual, psychological factors in this. There are cultural pressures. There are, like we've talked a lot about here today, there's how we're hardwired and how people in media in general and propaganda have studied this stuff, since the beginning of this century for sure, or the last century, and really understand, how to use certain words, how to use certain ways of talking about things. And I wonder, Rich, I just would love your take on this, because for some of us, Donald Trump comes out in 2015 and he's on some level, he is this outsider. He's almost like he's trying to be a comedian. And I think about those big rallies that he had, where he was, trying to get like, I always felt like he was trying to do a comedy show or something. And he wasn't like this serious person. Looking back at it now from where you are, do you think Trump is kind of a mad mastermind kind of a guy? Or do you think forces inside of people who really do want to dismantle the government and safety net and things like that, these Project 2025 people, do you think they've always just kind of used him as this kind of useful idiot kind of a thing? I'm so fascinated by that.
I don't think, looking back on it, I don't think that Donald Trump has ever had an original idea. And
that's true, probably, yeah.
I think that he is a conduit for others who see him as their vehicle to attain what they hope will be permanent power.
Yes.
And I felt the exact opposite, Kelly, when I first started supporting him. I felt that no, he was the one who was going to take on, and we were going to defeat those who would otherwise not have our best interests at heart.
And that's the allure. I mean, he's the hero of the story, right? Like, yes, lead us into the promised land, sir. You're going to take them on, and that is thrilling to be a part of that. Yeah.
And it informed so much of my thinking that I felt that I finally could really get behind a candidate who had a chance, I believed, had a chance to win, and I believed could finally obliterate the established political order. But you said something earlier that got me thinking about this, which is that it's easy to tear down, it's much harder to build up.
Yeah.
I wanted to tear everything down. I felt like the entire system needed a flamethrower to it. So yes, we got a disruptor. The problem is we got a disruptor who is anathema and antithetical to democracy and the stability that our institutions have created for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that is now where we stand, and it is going to take all of us. Well, there's always going to be some percentage that will always drink the Kool-Aid with him, I believe, but I think it is going to take more and more of us to come together to stand up for the broader values, and this, I think, is the challenge right now, is because we're so siloed, and we're already split and we're siloed, where do we find this bigger room where we can all come together and tick down the boxes of many, many, many things we all agree on? Sensible gun control. Women should have control of their bodies. Vaccines. People should have the choice to have their medicine if they want. Like so many different things. Of course, there should be immigration control, but we probably shouldn't be just randomly picking people off the streets and while their children are sitting in the car. Especially people who are already in the system trying to work it out. And then flying them to some dark country that. It's just crazy, but there's so much we do agree on. What is your hope for a public? Where's our agora, our meeting space, our public forum where we're going to find each other and lock hands and look into each other's eyes and see each other's hearts and say, enough is enough?
I would encourage those who have friends and family who are still in MAGA to let them know that if they ever have doubts or are questioning their beliefs, if there's something that they see that confuses them and they're not sure about it, that they have a friendly ear. Because the fear of judgment and ostracization is real.
Yeah.
Especially after Kelly, especially after all of this time.
Yeah.
No one is going to say, I lived a lie. I realize now that I lived a life based on lies for 10 years. I left,
it's a lot.
and you can too. And I just made a decision yesterday that I said, no, I'm out. That's enough. No, not after you've done it for year after year after year.
Yeah.
But people who may have done it year after year, who now are starting to feel a little unsure about what it was that they're supporting, society does not incentivize changing our minds and apologizing, especially publicly.
Yes. Yes.
So we can change some of that. When you mentioned at the outset about changing culture, we can have a positive impact in changing the culture of not reviling change, but celebrating it.
Yes.
That we make it something that we extol it as opposed to demeaning it. And as opposed to saying that, someone who changes, they're weak. That's what we thought in MAGA. We never apologized for anything. Even if we were 100% wrong, you never apologized.
Well, and that's what gets me to, it's such a great point, Rich. And I think this is really the crux of this is, we are evolving creatures. I mean, look at humanity for the last 2,000 years. We have evolved. Things have changed. Things are changing every 5 seconds now with technology and everything. We are change machines. And to have this stance of like, you're not allowed to, you made your bed, now you have to lie in it kind of a thing. Well, it drives me crazy because it's like, wait a minute, we're not going to get anywhere if that's going to be our stance. There's plenty of people who are, this is the interesting times we live in. You turn on MSNBC and there's Nicole Wallace, who has got this show, who worked for the Bush administration. I mean, she was like in the rooms when they were making up the weapons of mass destruction. So, I don't know, she wasn't like a part of that, but you know what I mean? She was there. She was part of that administration, you know? And so it's like people do change. And that's the thing about our beautiful country, is that we have been a country of change. And what's ironic is the people who want to take us back, you know, we're seeing it now, Project 2025, Christian fundamentalism, is very much about rolling everything back pretty much 500 years. And yet the progressives, I see these progressives who were like, you know, will not give anyone any empathy or any door opening. They won't kick the door open. And I get the anger, and I get the frustration, and I get the fear. That's coming from their fear, actually. But we absolutely have to let people change their mind publicly. We have to be able to treat them with humanity. And like you said, if they take responsibility for their choices and own it, then I see nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think it's going to be the only thing that will bring this country back together. And I mean, I think about South Africa and those reconciliation commissions
Yes.
and things like that, you know? So yeah, it's, well, Rich, I'm just so grateful for your work. I'm so grateful for your courage to be such a public person who changed your mind in public, who now are, you know, extending a hand to your fellow humans, to the fellow MAGAs who have changed their minds, and that their flicker of curiosity is still alive. Like, yay, like they get out of the silo and they're getting more information, yay, or whatever however it's happening. Maybe it is, you know, that their friend who's Guatemalan down the street, their lovely neighbor, is suddenly missing and gone. Like, who knows what gets people to do this, but that you're publicly inviting people into this space, that you have a space for people, a safe place to have conversation, and you're helping family and friends of people, teaching them how to extend the olive branch to their loved ones, because it is torn families apart in this country, and that's more heartbreaking than anything right now.
Yeah, and I want to apologize to all of those who are watching. They're meeting me for the first time, I think most, and, you know, say that I'm sorry for my past activism, but I don't dwell on that. What I focus on is the making amends and
Yeah.
looking to heal some of the damage that had been created from my own rhetoric and my deeds.
Yeah.
And for anyone who wants to get in touch with us, they can reach out to us at our site, leavingmaga.org. My email is on the contact page, and yes, I actually do read my emails. It comes to me. I know that people are inundated with requests for money, but as a nonprofit, we do operate on donations if anyone feels inclined. And for anyone who's seeing this, who they have close ones, loved ones who are in MAGA, and if you'd like to be a part of our support groups, they are free and they are open. So just let us know, and we'll get you registered for them.
Well, Rich, I will definitely put all of your website stuff in my notes for the podcast, and on YouTube, my YouTube channel, where people will see our video here. And I will make sure that I am letting people know about you and the work you do, and that there is a place for these conversations. And again, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the flicker of curiosity. I've done a couple of podcasts this year about curiosity and the importance of it in our human adventure we're on here. it is the only thing that ultimately gets us through the dark night of the soul, is opening up our imaginations back again to maybe I don't know everything. What's that over there? Maybe I should go look at that closer. And it is what evolution is really all about, is the curiosity of, maybe I should go check that out. So thank you for being here today. It was so lovely to meet you. And I look forward some point to meet you in actual person and hang out.
Yes. Thank you. It was a great honor to be with you. You know, thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba